Hello and welcome to New Frontiers on CCTV International. I'm Ji Xiaojun in Beijing. 2,000 years ago, a group of highly learned scholars emerged in China who would have a major impact on Chinese society that has lasted until today. They were passionate and courageous men who examined the society, politics, economics, and culture of their day and developed theoretical and practical ideas that they hoped would form the basis of a more perfect society. The intellectual movement they launched was a milestone in human cultural history. It ushered in a Chinese age of reason, during which intellectual and cultural currents were unleashed that are still running through Chinese society today. So let's continue our exploration of these ancient schools of thought.
In the year 506 BC, the king of Wu made Sunzi a general, and the new general then led the Wu army against the state of Chu. Sunzi won all 5 battles that ensued, earning him a reputation as a military genius. However, a debate about whether Sunzi actually wrote The Art of War continued unabated for 2,000 years. When archaeologists discovered 2 tombs from the Han Dynasty in the Yinchuo Mountains in 1972 in Linyi, Shandong Province, they discovered 2 manuscripts written on bamboo slips. One was entitled Sunzi's Art of War, the other Sun Bin's Art of War. What they found was surprising, because although the 2 books came from the same tradition, they were written in very different styles. With this discovery, the old debate was finally settled. Sun Bin was Sunzi's grandson, and this piece of the puzzle was enough to enable experts to conclude that The Art of War had indeed been written by Sunzi.
他是用最少的语言、最精炼的语言、最精辟的文字，把军事的最主要的内涵都包含在里面，而且他的观念很先进，他的方法很科学，他的思维很辩证。 他用5000字、5000多字，就把这些用兵甚至治国的道理都阐述清楚了。是我国也是世界上现存的第一部具有重大军事理论价值，同时也有超越时空、借鉴意义的伟大兵书。
There was also another school of thought that focused its attention on relations between states, but from a very different perspective to the one taken by the school of the military. This school was one of political rather than military strategists, and it emphasized diplomacy. It also wished to see the creation of an ideal society through the use of wisdom, a realistic approach to issues at hand, flexible tactics, and eloquent oratory. Of the 7 major states remaining at the beginning of the Warring States period, the strongest was the state of Qin, and it posed a great danger to the states of Qi, Chu, Yan, Han, Zhao, and Wei. One faction of political strategists, represented by Zhang Yi, proposed forming an alliance of states stretching from west to east and signing a treaty with Qin to maintain the status quo and thus preserve peace. Another faction, represented by Su Qin, proposed a north to south alliance of states to raise an army that would be strong enough to resist a Qin invasion. The idea being that if Qin invaded any one of the 6 states, they would all fight Qin together. The political strategists constituted a practical school of thought that focused on lobbying state leaders to settle conflicts through diplomacy. The most outstanding of these political strategists was Su Qin, a man of extraordinary eloquence who was highly skilled at persuading state leaders. Su Qin went first to the state of Qin, but when he was spurned by the king of Qin, he then made his way to the states lying to the east.
但是他看到这个秦国强大起来以后，一定会吞并六国，啊，所以他就是主张这个联合起来来抵抗那个秦国的这样一种扩张，所以他到六国去一个国家的去说服他们，啊，那么应该说最初他这个说服还是相当的成功的。 六个诸侯国呢，都这个被他给说服了，而且都封他为宰相。
Su Qin was the only person in Chinese history, and probably the history of the world, to simultaneously hold the position of Prime Minister in 6 different states. In that most dramatic of times, he was able to use his talents to exert an influence on the whole world in a single night. Even though they only held the station of ordinary citizen, Su Qin and the other political strategists were able to defeat countless powerful warlords using only the tongue as a weapon. In the specific conditions of the time, they exhibited extraordinary wisdom and creativity. They were the earliest and most unique practitioners of diplomacy in China's 5,000 years of history, and their activities had a great impact on the political and military events of the time. Most of the extant records of the political strategists are recorded in Stratagems of the Warring States. In the end, however, the state of Qin found ways to undermine the strategic alliance entered into by the other states, and Qin conquered all of them. The source of this victory is to be found in the legal reforms initiated by Shang Yang and the thinking of the legalists who followed him.
法家是重视法治的，法家想用明确的、具体的、妇孺皆知的这种法律语言、法律和法规啊，来规范社会生活的各个领域。他要求人人都守法，都严格依法办事，用法律的手段来实现富国强兵、统一天下。法家的理想呢，是铸造一个君臣上下贵贱皆从法的一个法治社会。
In 1975, at a Qin Tumen Shui Hudi Hubei province, archaeologists made a remarkable discovery. In addition to lacquerware, pottery and bronze articles and various kinds of food, they uncovered a treasure trove of documents written on bamboo slips. From these bamboo slips, it was discovered that the tomb was that of a minor legal official in the Qin court who had been so engrossed in his work that he had written down details of Qin law and the cases he had handled on bamboo slips. Fortunately for historians, after he died, these bamboo slips, which number more than 1,100, were buried with him. These records provide us with an intimate look into the Qin legal system and reveal how the arrival of a man named Shang Yang transformed a small, poor state on the fringes of civilization into a powerful country capable of subduing the rest of China. As Shang Yang saw it, if a country wanted a long period of political stability, it needed a strong legal system in which rewards and punishments were clearly differentiated, and a society in which people were promoted on the strength of their ability. History shows that legal reforms can be of such great power that they can sometimes redirect the course of history. In the Warring States period, it took the state of Qin just 19 years to progress from being just one of a number of competing states to being the most powerful state. This was a truly impressive example of legal reform in Chinese history, and its success portended the coming of a massive restructuring of society that would end a way of life that had prevailed in China for 550 years.
Shang Yang's reforms were a key milestone in the history of the state of Qin. Within 2 decades, a more powerful Qin had emerged, which would go on to have a major influence on Chinese history.
In the year 484 BC, Confucius had just completed 14 years of unrelenting travel around China, and he was 68 years old. He had visited princes and met with countless officials and ordinary citizens, and in all that time, he never wavered from his mission of upholding his ideal of promoting benevolent government and rule by virtue.
他就回到鲁国来教学生，他希望能教出一批有学问、有道德、有才能的人啊，来实现他的那个理想。他是希望这种样子，是吧？所以我们可以看到，这个今天这个《论语》这部书，主要都是他和他的学生的讨论啊、对话。告诉他的学生什么叫做仁爱哈，什么叫做礼。
Legend has it that Confucius had more than 3,000 disciples, more than 70 of whom had mastered the 6 arts of rites, music, archery, charioteering, calligraphy, and mathematics. Confucius believed that everyone had the right to an education, and he strongly advocated the ideal of educating everyone without regard to social background. And this ideal became a cornerstone of subsequent education systems in China. Confucius hoped that through education, everyone would come to acquire the virtues of benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trust, and that the result would be harmony in families, amity in society, and stability in the country.
春秋战国开始就有2套这个教育的系统，一套就是由政府来办的这个教育系统，就是官学，啊，一套就是私人讲学，就是孔子他们开创的这种私人讲学。那么这种官学的传统和私人讲学传统在中国一直是传下来的。
The method of teaching used by Confucius was hugely successful. He not only introduced an entirely new style of teaching, but also personally codified ancient written materials and defined the canon of classical works, known as the 5 Classics. They are the Book of Changes, I Qiang, the Book of Poetry, the Book of Rites, the Book of Music, and the Spring and Autumn Annals. The Book of Changes, one of the earliest books of Chinese civilization, presents a series of hexagrams made up of broken and unbroken lines and related epigrammatic texts for divination purposes. As this work was, according to legend, written by King Wen of the Zhou dynasty, it is also commonly called the Book of Zhou. Confucius wrote 10 commentaries on the Book of Changes, collectively called the Commentaries on the Changes, the first philosophical analysis and explanation of this classic text, and the fountainhead of Confucian theory and yin-yang thought.
我民族的精神的形成产生了非常重要的作用。为什么呢？因为孔子在《易传》上对这个他用这个天行健，君子自强不息来形容这种阳刚精神，用地势坤，君子厚德载物来形容这种阴柔的精神。而中华民族所以形成了这种民族精神，所以中华民族历来都具备有自强不息的刚健有为精神，又有厚德载物的这种宽厚包容精神。 所以这2种精神结合在一起，在这个发展的道路上，犹如他的母亲和黄河一样啊，带着这样的一种精神，永远的向前。
In the year 134 BC, Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty accepted the suggestion of Dong Zhongshu that Confucian thought become the official teaching of the state and that all other schools of thought be banned. From this point on, all officials were required to study the 5 classics. In the Song Dynasty, Zhu Xi suggested that the 5 classics be supplemented by the 4 books, the Analects of Confucius, Works of Mencius, Doctrine of the Mean, and the Great Learning. From then on, the 5 classics and the 4 books were the main focus of study by Chinese intellectuals from the cradle to the grave, and they served as the basis for personal cultivation and social advancement.
To some extent, the 5 classics and 4 books can be likened to the Bible or the Quran, and that they contain the essential teachings of Confucianism. Moreover, they also have an important place in Chinese culture.
This signboard, inscribed in the handwriting of Emperor Kangxi of the Qing dynasty, which hangs in Confucian Temple in Beijing, is a testament to the great esteem in which later emperors held Confucius. Today, there are more than 200 Confucian schools worldwide sponsored by the Chinese government, and they all foster the Confucian ideal of great harmony. Under the guidance of Confucius, the Chinese nation entered a period in which 100 schools of thought flourished and countless new ideas competed for acceptance. This vibrant intellectual climate continued on down through the Warring States period.
春秋战国时候，这个时期里边呢，这个学派的众多啊，和这个杰出的这些代表人物的众多啊，所以用一个诸子百家来描述它。比较大的呢，当然就是有那个儒家、道家、墨家、法家啊，这个阴阳家啊、名家啊、兵家啊、农家啊。 那么这个纵横家。
The experiment launched by the greatest social transformation in Chinese history had already been underway for more than 400 years, and the questions of how to select the best of the competing ideas and how to rule a unified country in which these ideas could compete freely were on the minds of rulers everywhere. One of the first states to address these questions was the powerful state of Qi, which poured a great deal of manpower, materials and money into establishing Jixia Academy in present-day Zibo in today's Shandong province. Renowned scholars were invited to the academy, and there they were free to debate, write and promote their own teachings. The government of the state of Qi took the attitude that people could come and go as they pleased. It gave awards to scholars so that they could freely pursue their research and discuss all matters of interest. It also conferred offices and awards on scholars on the basis of their accomplishments, and whenever a scholar achieved renown among his peers, he became known as a Jixia master. At a Jixia Academy, the most outstanding scholars from all over China were able to discuss current events and the state of the world, and they could exchange opinions on history and what the future might hold.
那么这个学宫的性质是由国家建立起来的一个文化中心吧，可以说，这个文化中心，它是把那个当时各个国家的有学问的人啊，都希望吸收它在那个中心来。那么据说最盛的时候，大概有上千人在这个中心里面讲学。
The famous Confucians Mencius and Xunzi were once Jixia masters. Mencius, who lived in the state of Qi for more than 10 years, carried on the Confucian intellectual tradition and promoted the Confucian concept of benevolent government. He believed that in the same way you can't draw squares and circles without a ruler and a compass, it was impossible to bring order to a country without rituals and music. He felt that countries could not be ruled effectively through coercion and force, and advocated the way of the king as opposed to the way of the tyrant. The doctrines of both Confucius and Mencius lie at the core of Confucian culture, and after his death, the reputation of Mencius was second only to that of Confucius. Xunzi arrived at Jixia Academy not long after the death of Mencius, and there he served 3 terms as the head of the academy. In his view, demarcations between the social classes could not guarantee social harmony, and while he didn't believe perfection was possible, he nevertheless felt that ritual was important for good government and social order, with laws and music playing a supporting role. In effect, Xunzi was able to bring together the great cultural achievements and contributions of the 100 schools of thought of pre-Qin dynasty China.
所以以后，各朝学术繁荣的情况底下，都是出现这种百家争鸣的情况。如果一个社会，假如它这个花园里头只有单一的一种花，我想那是不一定很美的。如果它有各种各样的花配合起来，可能是一个非常美丽的大花园。
Another important school within Jixia Academy was the Yin-Yang School, which tried to explain all phenomena in terms of the mutual influence of the 5 elements on each other, the 5 elements being metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The most famous representative of this school was Zhou Yan, another who lectured at Jixia Academy. Other schools represented at Jixia Academy included the Rural School, whose adherents studied the legends and customs of the people and engaged in agriculture, the School of Logicians, whose studies of logic sometimes bordered on sophistry, the Eclectic School, whose adherents were mostly natives of Qi, and people carrying on the teachings of the Taoists, Moists, military strategists and political strategists, along with representatives of lesser-known schools.
诸子百家到了汉代已经被归纳成6家了，对吧？而这6家又相互的结合，到最后就这个统合成了儒道2家了。一直到后来在这个佛教传进来，中国的传统文化格局基本上确立了，就儒释道3家。
In what was a vibrant time of great change, this group of intellectuals, united by a common concern for their country, engaged in dynamic debates on how to best create an ideal society, while clearly articulating and promoting their own systems of thought. In the process, the mystical atmosphere of ancient Chinese culture was dispelled, and in its place, a new sober-minded rationality appeared. Even though we're now separated from that great age of reason by more than 2,000 years, it is nevertheless the very foundation and source of latter-day Chinese culture and thought. And today, its flame of rationality still shines over the land of China.
The politics of benevolence of Confucianism, the democratic spirit of Mengzi, the dialectics of Taoism, the scientific approach of Moism, and the materialism of the legalists. Many of these ancient schools were a source of enlightenment for generations to come. Confucianism and Taoism in particular have not only penetrated every aspect of life in China, they have also extended their influence across Asia and the West. As such, they are a major part of the heritage of all humanity. Thank you for staying with us on New Frontiers and tuning in again next time when we'll bring you more of our series on Chinese civilization. I'm Qi Xiaojun from CCTV International. Bye for now.